today I realized that I have not uploaded my plugin Absorbiere to KVR yet. So I'm going to do that now, and on the post this video will be amped, and in this video I will give you a little introduction into my Sidechain Ringmod plugin. First of all, I want you to look at this oscilloscope down here. It is on this group which contains all of the tracks, so it's essentially the master channel, and it currently clips. It currently clips 0 decibel. If you listened to all of the tracks just by themselves, you would notice that none of them clip, not even the snare. A lot of them are actually quite far away from clipping. That's normal for music or audio in general. When you combine multiple waves together, they just add up. But you can do something against that, which is sidechain ring modulation. And in this video I want to show you what that looks like with my plugin Absorbiere. Let's make a group with all of the drums and also play them solo. So we can see that the snare gets a little bit higher in peak as when it's being played solo. So what I'm going to do about that is I will take the hi-hats and I will load my plugin Absorbiere on them. Because I know that at some point the hi-hats are being played at the same time as the snare. Now when I select the snare as the sidechain input and then click here on the capture button and play back, it will listen to the hi-hats and search for the loudest peak in the signal. When I click on the oscilloscope, it shows me the sidechain input gained by the sidechain gain parameter, which was reduced by 0.9 decibels apparently. So as you can see, the snare now peaks perfectly at 0 decibel going into this effect, which was not the case before. And if we only listen to the hi-hat in solo, it actually sounds pretty much the same as before, but if we check out the oscilloscope while turning the effect on and off and just inspect the peak levels, we can see that there is now more consistency on the volume of the snare. So the peak levels improved, even though we have pretty much the same sound as before. At least I cannot hear the difference. Now that is the strength of sidechain ring modulation. It lets you reduce peak levels and sometimes without even an audible difference, which is pretty cool. Now I could go ahead and say, okay, let's check out the drums and the bass together. And now that definitely increased the peak levels again. So now what I can do about that is I can load Absorbiere on my drums and just type drums into the identifier field. And then do nothing else with that instance. Now I copy the instance on the drums track, put it on the bass track after Serum 2 immediately. If you have effects on the track, then it would be at the end. And now I have to select the sidechain input, which would be the drums in this case, and just let it do its thing. Now we can see the snare is the loudest thing in the drum set. So the Sidechain Ringmod always orientates itself around the snare when you use the capture feature. And in this case, it increased levels by 0.8 so that it fits perfectly. We are back on peak levels that are below 0 decibels. And now I can just take this instance and also put it on all of the other tracks. Now here's one thing that sets Absorbiere apart from all of the other Sidechain Ringmod plugins out there, and you might be wondering already, why did I put the identifier drums in here? What's the deal with that, right? I didn't do that with the first instance of Absorbiere that I loaded. To remind yourself, that was this one, I didn't put an identifier here, so what's the deal with that, right? So back to the drums instance. Imagine the following scenario. You just wanna put an effect on your drums and tweak them, make something else out of it. Doesn't matter if it's subtle or extreme. Now this reshaped the shape of the drums a lot. Now usually when you have a Sidechain Ringmod plugin, you would have to go into all of the individual Sidechain Ringmod instances and tweak them so that the sidechain input gain fits again, because otherwise it will not work at its full potential. But I made it so that every instance that has the same identifier will also recapture when I press the capture button in this instance, even if this instance itself is not attached to any sidechain input, and because of that does not change the sound on this track, which it shouldn't, because it's the drums. You know, the drums should not be influenced by themselves. And as you can see, the peak levels are now normal again. It's just like before. See, that's why I made this feature, to make Sidechain Ringmod as accessible as possible, because I feel like the main problem with this technique is that it can be quite nerdy when you have to consider the gain staging all the time. I try to eliminate this problem with this feature. I hope the vision comes across. Now let's listen to some of these tracks in solo. That sounds ugly. Let's check out this one. That still sounds alright. I would say this one is alright as well. But you can see Sidechain Ringmod is quite an invasive process. When you play everything together, it might seem very subtle. But if you still run into the situation in which you just feel like it's too much Sidechain Ringmod, you can always go into one of the instances, and instead of manually changing the sidechain gain, you just dial down the mix parameter, and that will reduce the effect on this track. This will usually put things more back into the foreground of the mix, because sometimes there can be too much Sidechain Ringmod. Now obviously it does not fully reduce the peak levels anymore. But still it's quite okay. It stays below 0 decibel in this case. So yeah, you can reduce Sidechain Ringmod levels in Absorbiere and still get a lot of benefits from the overall effect. Yeah. That's all for now. I hope you like the effect. And if you have any more ideas what you want to do, I don't want to go in the direction most Sidechain Ringmod devs go right now, where you add a lot of fancy extra controls with envelope followers, and you know, I think that's very creative, but I just want to focus on solving this ducking problem with as little mental friction as possible. That is my personal goal, so that it's just an accessible technique that can be used without really thinking about it.